Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking a moment away from your eggnogs or whatever you may be enjoying this holiday break. We want to make sure to keep up the steady rotation of the Allen and Heath mini master classes. And we have a special guest, not just the usual rotation, but with every hair in the proper place, Hair Force One, Kevin Madden, Madden himself, kicking off a really cool session today. Kind of an overview. We'll go very high level with the Allen and Heath ecosystem, and then kind of go pretty far down into the weeds and some cool interconnects and system designs that even the most talented of you among the audience here may just stand back in awe of what Kevin has put together and the kind of cool stuff that you can do utilizing these different protocols. So without any further ado, if you've got chat, questions, things like that, go ahead and put them in the chat area. We'll make sure to get to those, or I'll answer them along the way. But let's let Kevin kick this off and get into what he's got for us today.
Thank you, Jeffy. The superlatives flow freely from your marketing mouth. I love it. So good for our company. First of all, an apology for the deception that Jeff foisted upon the internet world. The little picture in the invite of me is about 15 years old. So I suppose if I colored my hair and lost a bunch of weight, I might look like that. So this is the real me. Okay, so usually these mini master classes are relevant to Samantha running topics about AHM64 and the distributed audio system, and Bangs typically talking about tricks of the trade, different techniques of mixing D live. This is really going to be more of a sort of a conceptual design possibility overview of what you can do mixing and matching Allen and Heath through its interoperable ecosystem, if that makes sense. So it's called Everything I/O. I would invite you, if you're designing systems or want to know how things can plug and play, and I'll toggle over to our website here sometime during the presentation to kind of show you, but it's really easy to just sort of click and grasp on the console you're working with, what your remote rack options are. So this is strictly about I/O options through interface cards and racks. And let's take a look at just a brief review of the 6 series of products we're talking about. I'm not going to really train you on what they are and what they do, but just sort of to review. So our smallest, lowest cost, most affordable digital mixing system is the Q series, and it consists of, it's a 48K platform. It's the only 48K DSP chip-based console in our product line since we've moved to FPGA on everything else. It does run 48K. The latency is really good. It's sub or around 2 milliseconds, but it consists of 5 major frame sizes, and the frame sizes are relevant to the I/O involved. So unlike Q, where you can pick different frame sizes and they all mix 48 by 20 stereo, your mix capacity is defined by the frame size you choose. A couple of rack mount options, which can expand beyond the 16 inputs on the back using the DSnake protocol, which I'll talk about. You can get up to 32 live inputs. SQ, of course, 3 frame sizes. The 5 is rack mountable. And this is where we introduce something called the S-Link port, which I'll start talking about here in a second, but just be reminded that the frame size is irrelevant. All of them mix the same 48 live external inputs. This is not including effect returns across stereo, 20 stereo mix buses. And there is some configurability in your bus selection, but with the S-Link port and the card options, you can be looking at possibly around 300 by 300 things that a show file or a scene could capture. Small footnote, the S-Link, if you have a Q console and you want to add an SQ to it, the latest 1.95 firmware for Q will allow the DSnake port to interact with the S-Link port of an SQ. So you could, if you were adding an SQ to an older Q system, you can just put a category cable between them and share I/O digitally. So that's kind of a neat update that we did for Q once the SQ came out. So taking a look at the back of the SQ, this is the only slide I have that shows the card options, but you do have that S-Link port. Now, S-Link is a protocol conversion port. It is not its own digital protocol. It basically turns into whatever device you have plugged into it. So for example, if I were to plug the older 48K D-Snake boxes of the Q and the former GLD series, it becomes D-Snake. If I plug an ME personal monitoring system, it becomes ME, DX-Link and GigaAce and so forth. So it's truly kind of a, like I said, just a protocol conversion port. And you can get a double S-Link connection if you put an S-Link card in the card slot. Otherwise, Dante, Waves, and Madi are now an option for SQ. Avantis is newest in the family, doing quite well out there, 64 by 42 bus. And on the back of it, you also see the same S-Link connector and a couple of D-Live card slots. So these are different than the SQ card slots in that they use the same 128 channel 96K card options, all available for D-Live. We don't really promote or advertise this, but an Avantis really is a D-Live in a truncated mixed capacity. And then, of course, D-Live, which is the flagship of our family right now, 128 inputs across 64 buses, and you have 7 surfaces and 7 engines to choose from. There are 2 series called S-Class and C-Class. Just in brief, the S-Class is really more the tour grade stuff with, optional auto-redundant power supplies, auto-redundant connectors for the GigaAce umbilical to a surface and the DX expansion ports. And then this guy is a little bit of an outlier. It's an engine without any I/O on it. So if you just wanted a broadcast console hanging off of a big fat D-Live system, there's no point in buying an engine with a bunch of I/O you're not going to use, because maybe the I/O on the back of the surface will work for you. But you still have all the expansion ports and card slots. So let's kind of get into what those options are. And again, unique to D-Live, relevant to other consoles in the industry, the lowest cost engines and smallest surfaces all plug and play with each other's engines and surfaces. They share show files, they share scenes, libraries, everything is identical. You're just basically picking the hardware, and everything under the hood is the same in the D-Live world. And then, of course, our AHM64, our 64 by 64 96K matrix distributed audio box has the S-Link port on it. Now, this guy uses SQ interface cards, so you can put another S-Link card, Waves, Dante, Madi in here. Okay, this is the basket of boxes that mostly work with most of our consoles. So the S-Link box will connect to everything here except the Dante versions of these throw boxes. So that is to say the Avantis and SQ consoles could connect with all of these other boxes. D-Live, little limited. You can't use the 48K boxes across the top. And then a Q console, for example, could only use the 48K consoles across the top, boxes across the top. So what is D-Snake? D-Snake is basically a 40-channel protocol. And I say 40 because it's the number of live inputs that could be harvested externally by way of outboard racks. There are actually more inputs that could happen through line. Effects returns, I usually never count, although, when we promote and market consoles, you'll see an input count, including effect returns. I'm always strictly talking about, I'm rolling into a gig, how many stage inputs do I have? With D-Snake, you could get a total of 40, and that would include an AR 24 by 12. It's got an expander port here that you could hang an AB 168 or a smaller box called an AR 84. Now, the ME system, MED transmission protocol, can hang off this dedicated expander port on the 2412, or there's a second port here on the AB 168 where I could also hang the ME hub, MEU hub, or directly connect any of the ME boxes, the personal headphone mixers. So D-Snake is the first of 4 protocols that S-Link can communicate with. In the Q world, it's restricted to itself, although I can take the D-Snake port and connect it to an SQ, as I showed you earlier on in that other slide. So what is ME? The ME protocol is, again, 40 channels at 48K. We have a choice of 2 different headphone mixers. The ME1, which is can receive 40 channels of labeled audio, and the ME500, which is more affordable, gives you 16 channels. Sorry, I have these labels reversed, I just noticed. Don't save that. And then you have the option of using this 10-port PoE hub. I will show you in a later slide how you can use a more affordable third-party layer 2 unmanaged switch. So if I was getting a little Q console, maybe a Q16, and I just wanted, you know, 2 or 3 of these, this $2,000 box may be a little stiff, you know, price point to swallow. So you could use a third-party layer 2 unmanaged fast Ethernet switch. We've discovered in recent years, as gigabit switches are becoming more available, that gigabit doesn't work very well with the MED protocol, so we really encourage you to go fast Ethernet. So here's an example of how I could connect an ME to any of the devices that you see here. Either through an MEU hub or a third-party switch, I could connect directly to the D-Snake port of a Q, the S-Link port of an SQ, S-Link port of an Avantis, or your D-Live has a dedicated MED port over here on the right. And then all of these boxes, which could be plugged in different ways, all have the ability to have ME hanging off of them. So you got a lot of options when you're mixing and matching, doing larger systems with a whole bunch of IO choices. There are a lot of ways to get ME hanging off your system, and I'll show you some situational kind of napkin scratch drawings I did for some people over the years, and you can see how creative you can get with plugging these in. The third thing S-Link can be is something called, oops, did I miss a slide here? Sorry, I'm kind of out of order, but that's okay. GigaAce is the protocol that D-Lives use to share a total of 128 by 128 channels coming and going at 96K. There are no drivers to the outside world. The S-Link ports on both SQ and Avantis can plug into a GigaAce card, and even though an SQ, for example, is only 48 live inputs, or an Avantis is 64. In the IO screens, you will see all 128 channels of possible audio that could be porting through the console, maybe hopping to a next one, or you have up to 128 sources to choose from to harvest for your mix in Avantis 64, SQ 48. And then up here, there's a GX box. This has some cool features, which I'll show here in a second. The GX connector is actually a GigaAce channel count. And we don't call it GigaAce because it's not, you know, the bi-directional data and audio control. It's an expander box. It's sort of a one-way trip. So that GigaAce GX, GigaAce expander port, can transceive 128 inputs, and I can get to it by either a GigaAce card. I can get to it with an S-Link card because the GX is GigaAce. So both of these would obviously be in compliance with that. And then I have a couple other ports here, which are more DX expanders. Let's talk about what DX is. DX originated on D-Live as a 32-channel expander port. Now, this is a C-class engine, so you don't see the audio redundant port. So this is a 32-channel port. DX can support 2 devices, total of 32 channels. So I can have 1, 2, 3, 4. And with the addition of the DX port on the back of a chosen surface, I could actually have 2 more DX 168s, or a total of 3 DX 32s. So this is a card cage 32-channel box. It's S-class in nature for D-Live. It has the auto redundant power supplies and dual redundant connections, but it can work with an Avantis or an SQ because the S-Link port speaks DX. So what if I need more than 4 DX 168s hanging off an engine, or if I want to go with a DM0 that has no IO and I want to have only remote audio, but I do need more than 4 boxes? There are a couple options. This is a DX Link card. So these 4 ports can be 32 channels each, 2 devices. I could have up to 8 DX 168s or 4 DX 32s hanging off of these 4 ports. They will also operate in auto redundancy if you want to, which would mean you could only have 2 sets of 32 channel interfaces. Outside of the DX Link card, if you don't want all those category cables running to the card slot of your Avantis or your DLive, or you just want to have that I/O deployed at a different location, we have this guy called a DX Hub. Now, the S-Link port of an Avantis or an SQ will communicate with the Giga-Ace connector, or a Giga-Ace card from a DLive can communicate with this Giga-Ace port. And this is a half rack space AC powered version of the card. So I could have one line running from the console, DLive or Avantis, Giga-Ace, Avantis or SQ by S-Link, and now I can have that hub and spoke of potentially 8 boxes or 2 DX32s outside of the console, living elsewhere in the facility or in another place in the rack. So DX32, 96K, 32 channels total, 2 devices total. And we'll look at an example of how the GX4816, let me shrink this here. 4816 can also give you a lot of cascading options. So we would connect to the port by a Giga-Ace card DLive, S-Link port or Giga-Ace card Avantis, or S-Link port SQ. And now we have 2 more DX32s. So remember, 2 devices, 32 channels. They could be this DX012, this is 12 analog outs, or these 2 sets of 4 can be stereo AES connectors. That could be a 20 output box, but it's 12 analog as well. So I have 4 more DX boxes I can hang off of 4816. The neat thing about the 4816 is we made protocol conversion on the far right port. The DX port number 2 can also support your ME system. So again, a lot of ways to hang stuff out in different directions, and I'll show you some drawings a little later on if it's not clear. It's a lot to grasp. We can do so much with all of our in-house protocols that we don't really need to rely on Dante or Maddie or third-party protocols to get a whole lot going on. And just an example of how ridiculous this can go. Imagine I had DX Link cards in all 3 slots of a DLive, including the 2 slots in the back of a Surface. You could have up to 48 boxes cascaded out. Now, we're not in the business of doing, huge convention centers or airports, and theoretically this would work. I honestly don't know a single customer that may have deployed that much I/O, but the point is you have a ton of options of how to get little boxes out all over the place, again, with our own in-house protocol. Relevant to DLive and Avantis. Remember, Avantis is really a DLive. We just don't call it that. You have a bunch of card options here. So 128 and 64 channel Dante cards. This is our Giga-Ace card. Again, 128 channels for splitting audio between DLive, Avantis, SQ. Here's a fiber Ace card. This is a fiber option. It's a lot more money, but you do have both category connections and EtherCon connections. And this allows you to go up to 1 mile in length. It's a dual mode fiber. We have several AES drop-in modules. Now these are all stereo AES in here. So this is 2x8, 4x6, 6x4, and then 10 outputs. If you just need more AES outputs and you don't want to get a DX32, with the big kind of expensive 8-channel modules, you can just drop, these guys are a few $100 and you can just drop these into the back of an Avantis or a DLive. Maddie allows you connection by way of SFP optical, which is more popular in the broadcast world, or your more traditional BNC connectors. Of course, we have a Waves card. Our Waves card is 128 channels at 96K. You have 3 ports on board. And I'm going to talk about Dante and Waves choices here in a minute for recording. Here's our DX Link card. And this, while it's not a card, this is a half rack hub, like we talked about, if I wanted to, cascade out the I/O to spoke out from a different location other than the back of a console or a DLive mix engine. So brief word about multi-track recording. A lot of our contractors and integrators just go ahead and throw a Dante card in. Yes, Dante is an effective multi-track recording system. It's a bit more complicated than Waves, and it could introduce a possibility for your customer or yourself to get into trouble, because there are now hundreds of manufacturers that have Dante enabled interfaces on board, we see a lot of people putting together huge systems where they want a Dante card to do multiple traffic for multiple different purposes. Say I choose a 128 channel Dante card, and by the way, these will go down to 48K if need be. I want to do 64 channels of recording. I want to have a dozen Shure wireless coming in. Maybe I want to use it for drive lines at the same time. That's a lot of channels for multiple purposes that honestly could get screwed up down the road. You know, a design integrator or somebody who's the tech, you know, master at a facility, if you're going to go this route and handle all that traffic on Dante, you really need to lock up Dante controller and throw away the keys and don't touch it again. Because if you get in there and you start making changes, you got to make changes to your IO screen. All of a sudden people are, you know, getting drive lines that are meant for speakers that are going to their recording system. It's just not a good idea to mix and match different applications. Of course you can do it, and some people do it very well. But if all you're looking for is a good, stable recording interface, why not use a Waves card? You know, most recording interfaces will see Waves, see the Waves option as an interface, and it's just dry, straight 96K audio up to 128 channels. Plus, a lot of people don't realize that if you're going to record into a laptop or a computer and you've downloaded Dante virtual sound card, it used to be 30 bucks. I think it's 40 or 50 bucks now. That allows you 64 channels at 96K or 64 at 48K and 32 channels at 96K. You know, I have had customers, a friend of mine down in Atlanta called me up and, you know, he had the 64 channel 128 channel Dante card in a rig. And, you know, he wanted to do 64 channels recording at 96K, and he's kind of got pissed at me saying, what the heck, I can only do 32 channels. You know, I said, well, dude, if you want to do more than 32 channels at 96K, you got to get a PCI card for a frame computer or an outboard interface that'll allow you to do a higher channel count. The Dante token virtual sound card, again, only allows you 32 channels at 96K, 64 at 48. So Waves may be a better choice for recording. And why not keep them separate anyway? You know, have a Waves card for recording and have a Dante card to handle all, you know, the third party comings and goings, just to keep things separate and sift it apart. So Dante does open you up to the outside world. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Obviously multi-track recording, as we talked about, but we do have Dante versions of our throw boxes and install boxes. That's the 164, obviously a 16x4 install box. It'll fit in a 12x12 NEMA Hoffman panel, or the same frame size as an AB168, which is 48K, DX168, which is 96K, and this DT168 is 96 or 48K, depending on how you program it in Dante controller. So we can be talking to these Allen and Heath Dante devices. These are some new little breakout boxes. We have 3 coming in a few months. We launched them a while ago, but the shortage of Dante chips has sort of slowed us down. And I can speak to that issue in brief, but we do have 2 in, 2 out, and a 2 in by 2 out little box here. Obviously, we can hang off of, say, a Yamaha console's got a Dante interface, and you want to add a D-Live for broadcast, or for some reason you want to interface 2 consoles together. Obviously, you can do that. And you know, drive lines, wireless. A lot of people will use MADI also. I didn't include a slide on this, but you know, some people will want to hang you know, an Allen and Heath off of a Digico console that's got native MADI on board. Okay, just slap a MADI card in your D-Live or Avantis, and y'all can, you know, play with a Digico board. So here's an example of an ME system that can hang off of third-party consoles. Typically, this will be done by either Dante or MADI. It's not uncommon that, you know, somebody will have a large Digico system and they want to use our personal monitor systems. Well, you can throw a MADI card in this slot and get that done. Digico, being a sister company of ours, does now offer a direct MED card for their systems. So you don't necessarily have to go third party, but this is how you would hang an ME system off of, say, a Yamaha console or any device that's got a Dante interface. But We do have Dante, Matty, and Wavesard options. These are 48K cards. They're not the same as the cards I showed you on that slide. They're kind of older legacy cards. Probably won't be around forever just because, you know, we've sort of moved into the 96K FPGA world, but they are still supported and can be used in MEU hubs. So a few situational drawings here. Let's take a look at these one by one real quick here. This is a D-Live S-Class system. We've got 3 card slots. I've got a Dante card going to a Yamaha QL console that the person wanted. And by the way, I apologize. These are just fast little chicken scratch drawings I do for people. You know, we can make a proper line drawing if need be, but this is sort of more for concept. And I saved these, so I went ahead and scanned them. So I've got a DX32 hanging off of the DX port of the engine. I've got a Waves card for recording, a Dante card for connection to another console, and then a Giga Ace card is going to do a split to a DM0 at front of house. The monitor console owns all the audio. That's why we've got a DM64 here. So at front of house, it's just a DM0. He wants to do recording as well. We've got a Waves card and a DX32 box here with various inputs and outputs. Here's an example of an SQ hanging off the Giga Ace card. Remember, S-Link speaks all 4 languages, so I can hang it off of a Giga Ace card on a D-Live. We've got some ME systems. You guys, if you've been on other of our presentations, know that we have these external third-party controllers called IP6, 1, and 8. So here's somebody who wanted a bunch of IP6s for people on PACs downstage to be able to control their stereo buses for their ears. And then we've got a bunch of ME systems for the fixed backline musicians that are just going to go ahead and plug into the mixers and mix themselves. Here we've got a pair of Avantis that are doing all audio sharing by way of Dante. So I've got the S-Link port going off to some MEs, and then all of the IO and the 2 consoles are all hub and spoked to a switch, which is also handling drive lines. So this is a fairly sophisticated patch through Dante controller. And again, something, you know, you want to kind of lock this up and throw away the keys necessarily. They also have got a recording option with the Waves card coming off the Avantis. Here's a pair of D-Lives. We've got an S-Class with a DM0 and then a C-Class 3500 with a CDM64. Again, both have Dante cards sharing their audio with DTs. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that gain tracking, that is to say, if I turn the mic pre up on my console, the digital trim sympathetically goes down on your console. That is something that we have had for a few years now by way of Dante cards and DT boxes. Now, until the 1.9 firmware that just came out with D-Live, that's the only way we could do gain tracking. So the outboard DT boxes shared by 2 consoles, whether Avantis or D-Live, could have gain tracking for these inputs, not the built-in IO on the engine. That now has changed with D-Live 1.9. I can have 2 D-Live systems that can do gain tracking through a pair of Giga Ace cards. So here's a pair of Avantis with an SQ5 for broadcast. Again, we have the S-Link connecting to S-Link, so that's the digital split between those 2. I got a Giga Ace card speaking to the SQ5, and then the DX Link card is allowing a pair of DX168s to hang off of the front of house Avantis. And the monitor console needs some more output, so they chose a DX012 to give them more analog and or AES by way of a Giga Ace card in the Avantis. So what do we have going over here is a pair of Avantises. They're doing their digital split S-Link to S-Link, and then again a DX Link card with some DX32 and a DX012, another DX Link card with a DX32, and Waves card for recording. This will be the last one I'll go through, but there are hundreds of combinations of ways you can put this together. So here we have an SQ with 2 Avantis. Avantis is at front of house. Dante for Shure Wireless going in this system, and they're doing recording with it at the same time. They know what they're doing. They want to go complex, you can do that. And then my S-Link port is supporting a GX4816 with a DX hanging off of one of the DX ports on the 4816. The broadcast board is going to cascade audio to the monitor board SQ. And then they need more outputs for monitors here, so they added a DX012. And then our last scenario here is a large S7000D Live that's going to be doing a broadcast and monitor split to a pair of Avantis. And you can see that the monitor console has a lot of I/O, including DX168, so GX4816, and this is how we're getting the MEs off of the second port of the GX4816. 2 GHz cards here. This is serving as the hub to the other consoles. It's pretty common nowadays for the monitor position to own the mic pre's or have master control typically, because your boss or your talent is on stage with the little earbuds in their fragile ears, and we wouldn't want a front of house person doing an erroneous gain change that the monitor person doesn't know about. So pretty common in touring world for the last 10 years for digital split systems for the monitor guy or gal to have control of the mic pre's. But again, S-Link connection to the Avantis with 1 GHz card. Second GHz card is going over to my D-Live DM0. They've got a Dante card, presumably for wireless, I don't know. And then off of the back of the Surface, we put another GHz card so that they can hang an SQ console. So here's 2 Avantis, a DM0, S7 D-Live, and a little SQ console hanging off it. So a lot going on. Before I wrap up, I do want to show you the Allen and Heath website's I/O page. So everything I/O is a cool page that we added about a year ago, just because we have so many options. You can scroll down here and see all the physical devices that are audio interfaces for our stuff, whether Dante or any of our native protocols. But if you're unsure about which box works with what, let's click on a console and it'll show you, okay? So the D-Snake boxes, the 48K boxes all work with Q. SQ would show you that these, of course, do work with it as well because of that S-Link port. If you had a Dante card, you could go with DT boxes, and then the S-Link port would also support GigaAce and the DX protocol for these expander guys. And then again, we have Dante version throw box, Dante version install box. So I won't go through all these, but this is just a quick, good little bookmark if you're, if you're a design integrator, consultant, and you just want a quick reference about what goes with what. That'll kind of give you a fast overview of, what boxes can go with what. And that will do it for now. I guess I did it in under 35 minutes, Jeff. We were shooting for 25. I hope this was valuable. Any interesting questions in the chat, or if anybody wants to unmute their microphone, I'd be glad to field some questions for you.
Yeah, actually a couple really interesting questions / comments in case folks weren't paying attention to the chat. The first one to highlight, Kelly had a good question, and it's kind of asking about the ME system and whether that's being updated to 96K anytime soon. And my long-winded marketing speak answer is the fuzziest way possible of saying I can't really tell you. But the point that I wanted to highlight was, unlike many other companies, certainly there are others who do this as well, but I think we particularly pride ourselves on this. We really do listen to your input and ideas and feedback that we're getting from the field. I've included a link in the chat there as far as feature requests and things like that. It's pretty much 100%. If you go across the latest features of AHM, if you look at the latest firmware updates for D-Live or Avantis, very rarely are you seeing something in there that didn't pop up or have some communication or conversation back and forth in those user forums. So we do look at those. Obviously our R&D team, geniuses as well, and not to say 100% of it fully comes from outside, but I will say if you've got requests like that, the more those start to pop up and the more those conversations happen, the more likely that sort of feature is to show up in a future release. So just to second that, please go over there if you've got ideas, if you've, hey, I've been using this forever and I think if it just had X feature, man, it would really, be the bee's knees for me. Please go ahead and put that into the forum. I know we've got, actually, I think I saw Heath is online here. So, our product managers, are listening.
Graded.
They're lurking in the background always to see how we can be better. So, please go ahead and check that out, bookmark that if you've got ideas. We do pay attention to that. Yeah, as Keith says, he's lurking.
Yeah, the product managers are the moderators for those forums. I mean, I travel on the road and, I interface with a lot of mainly integrators and consultants, but they always give me ideas and I'm like, dude, put them on the forum. Because that's where the product managers see your feedback directly, and they may ask Q&A. I mean, there are features that definitely were added to DLive in various firmware updates that may have been on the drawing board, but got escalated. I know, spill groups was one of them that really got fast paths because a lot of people wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I do see Jason and a few other folks asking whether the recording will be available, and yes, so we are recording this. We do have a fairly big web update coming where I think we're up to 25, maybe close to 30 of these Alan and Heath mini masterclass sessions will all be added to the Alan and Heath website shortly. So we're just kind of going through the archive, selecting the sessions that were the most interactive and kind of the best mix of all of those over the last couple of years here, and adding those. So please just keep an eye on the Alan and Heath website. If you receive the invite to this session or the reminder, then you're also on the list. When that does get updated, I'll send a quick note. So Jason, yes, it will be available. If you need it quicker, go ahead and respond to any of those reminder emails that have been sent out. That'll get to me eventually, and I can send you a direct link if you do need to watch this sooner. I'm guessing with the holidays, probably a couple weeks until that is updated on the website. Cool. And it looks like all the rest of it is basically in the chat so far. Kevin's fan club chiming in. I'm not sure when Kevin's set for the next masterclass, but certainly in the next few months.
That's after the next regionals do theirs.
Yeah,
I'll come out and see you in person though.
Yeah, we definitely.
Oh, there's some other questions we want to look at here. There was somebody who asked something about why so many series.
Yeah,
why so many series? The card options are confusing. I understand the stage box expansion compact concept. Overall, it can do what you want. You need to pick carefully. Well, it's confusing because we give you so many options, unfortunately. But fortunately, there are so many ways to do things. Anybody has a question, I am, aside from Alan and Heath in the UK, any of us pretty much can, off the top of our head, tell you what works with what and whip together one of these, quick line drawings. If you have some ideas about what things need to be where and how would I connect them, we can get that answered for you real quick. So, I pick up my phone on weekends if it's an emergency, but always, don't be shy. Shoot me a text, call me, shoot me an email. Any other questions? Somebody asked about ME. ME is a very healthy product series. It's long in the tooth, admittedly, but as of COVID, the sales have just continued to climb. It's really unbelievable how well that product is working. A lot more people are using it with third-party interfaces as well.
Yeah, I did include the link in there as well. Kevin had noted that Digico also makes a native card from their consoles into me. So that link is there.
You answered that question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm behind.
No problem. Sweet. Well, awesome. It looks like that may do it for our questions for today. As noted, we will make this recording available shortly. It'll be on the Alan Heath website. And we'll keep these Wednesday mini masterclass sessions rolling pretty much without fail. So we've got another one scheduled next week, and we'll keep it going for everybody.
And
so
speaking of masterclass, the master classes, as COVID allows us to kind of unlock and get back out on the road, we hope this spring, maybe this summer, to be getting back to our road shows, where me or Bangs, or, we get out and do 4-hour classes with a bunch of DLives in a classroom. So keep an eye out for that activity. Arguably several months away, but we really do want to get back to, direct interface with groups of customers in the field. So,
yeah,
cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Kevin, and we'll see everybody on a future Wednesday.
Cool.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Thanks all. Cheers.